Hello everyone, I'm Hanna Hedeland, and I'm going to introduce the work we're doing to improve the accessibility of the ELAR archive in the ELAR and ELDP teams. And I have to point in this direction. ELAR, for those not familiar with the archive, is a global archive, so we don't have a particular regional or areal focus. You can see that there are collections here all over the world, not so much North America, not so much Europe. But almost all over the world, we have more than 650 audiovisual documentation project collections, and they represent more than 800 languages. And we also have a steadily growing archive collection with an increasing number of projects not being ELDP projects, which used to be the only projects depositing, but this has been, of course, possible for a long time now to also deposit with ELAR if you're not an ELDP grantee. And as a contrast to these many languages, we see that the archive interface and also the metadata which describe these collections, make them available and understandable, reusable, is in English. And this is, of course, as Mandana pointed out, it's a very problematic barrier, and well, we need to do something about it. So there was a plan for this already before I joined the team in 2022, how to go about to actually take on this task, which is not an easy task. So, of course, it will not be possible to translate everything into all of these languages, although it would be very nice to have such an archive. But instead, it was decided to define regions where a subset of the collections, which all belong to this region, would then be made available in the language that would be considered to be widely used and known in this area. It's one step, but it's an important step. And what we're starting with is the pilot case is the Latin American collections, which will be made available in Spanish. And this is, well, I guess like a pragmatic, strategic kind of choice. Obviously, we can benefit from the amazing work that ELAR has been doing in this area for so long and is now even taking it further with the new version. So this, of course, has been an inspiration and help for us. And yeah, so it could be like an easy task. You know, we have the metadata in English, we translate it into Spanish, and then Jonas and Nils, they create this portal, and we just put the data in there, and we're done. It was not that easy. Anyone could probably have told us if they had went through this. Partly because language documentation metadata is not simple. It is complex, it is structured, it has metadata on the various aspects. And also at ELAR, we're also seeing that ELAR has gone through like 3 archiving systems, I think, and various metadata tools. And although it's all the same format, it's all in IMD, there are differences in where and how certain information has been encoded, so that I was actually surprised to see how much of the data is actually multilingual, but the current archival system doesn't know where to look everywhere because it's just a machine that is told to look somewhere, and it cannot look in all places and interpret this. So what we needed to do to take on this task was to make sure that we have good metadata workflows. So for new data, ELAR has been for a long time assessing the data that comes in before upload with preloading checks. And what we did was also to make sure that these are as efficient as possible, to make sure that people working at ELAR or ELDP depositing staff, that they use their time as human beings to support people, because a lot of people need a lot of support for doing this, of course, and that they not use the time to be like checking the structural or other kinds of aspects of metadata that machines can do and do better. So this is one part of what we did. And also we increased the checks we do after the data, also in addition to the metadata has been uploaded. And then there is also a collection review after each new version has been created. So this is one part, so make sure that the new data that comes in is not problematic, so to speak. And what we did to take on the task of being able to work on the existing data is that we added ELAR workspace. So the archive is, the little P is for Preservica, the archiving software that we're using. And now you see the little fox there. This is GitLab, so this is Git, and you might have heard about Git for versioning control. So this is what we're now using to be able to have a better control over changes that we make to the metadata, and also to be able to, in a controlled manner, also feed these corrections back into the archive using the APIs of the archiving software and a bit of Python. And the tasks that we're doing are, as I said, a lot of the metadata is in fact already multilingual. So what we have to do is to try to split this up so that we can actually mobilize the translated content that is already there and do not try to retranslate this, which would probably make a worse result. And also we do the translation of those parts that are missing, and we'll be having this reviewed then by the depositors as far as possible, and otherwise by support, like for people who will know how to correct this, translators. And then the new portal comes into the picture. There is a conversion into the RDF format, and you might have heard of this from the linked data context, and then the data is fed into the ELAR portal. And this is what Jonas now is going to show, so fingers crossed for a live demo. It's always the...
Okay, so this is the new portal. So I think Hanna mentioned that the data is saved in a software called Preservica, but I think Preservica is mainly used to archive things and not to have like an easy access to it. So the idea of this portal was to provide such an easy access, but also provide a multilingual access. So we have here this portal, and we can now switch between languages, and we can go to the collections and see all the collections, all the this is all the Latin American collections, and again we can here easily switch to English, and not only is like the interface translated, but also the data itself. So for example, the titles here, we have recorded them now multilingual in the data, so to have them accessible in both languages. And we can have here like the standard stuff from most portals, where you can filter by country. Should I pick one? Maybe Ecuador. Yeah, and then they update, and you can see which languages are in these collections. If you have, if you want to check out a specific language, and yes, we also have a map that is also multilingual. I think United States of America is a good example. That is also then translated to Spanish. And you can choose here also, you can get a good overview of where all the collections are in this portal. And we can pick one here, for example. And then this is kind of like the collection page. You get some basic information about the project, some description, and this is also translated. How it works. Here's the description in both Spanish and English. And then here we have the session, so you can easily access the actual data. You can also change here by the language within this collection, and then also some genre. I can also switch back to English. And some file formats if you want to maybe check out some videos. We can do this. I hope it works. I'm not going to show the whole video, but we also have some more, I guess, more accessible audio players that not only play the audio, but also show some sort of visual depiction of the actual audio. This is loading quite long. Maybe I should pick another one. One with whatever, you get the idea. Yeah, we have here kind of like an easy access to all the files. I think the software that is used, Preservica, actually has something similar, but it's kind of more cumbersome and difficult to navigate and really slow. And this was like a pilot project to not only have the data in not more than one language, but also have like a more easier access and to make it more enjoyable for everyone. this is basically it, yeah.
Yeah.
Any questions?
Well, I'm just going to say thank you very much.
I'm going to abuse my privileges first and just make the comment that even if that were only in English, that looks so much more usable than the Preservica site, if I can be very blunt in public.
You can. We are the last ones that have a problem with
It's so fast.
recognizing issues.
Okay, now, anybody else?
Yeah, thanks. I think this is amazing. It looks fantastic. The only worry I have, I mean, we did some of this work, Julia might remember, 15 years ago or so with community portals onto the Dobus archive. They don't work anymore because we changed the archiving system, the underlying systems that we used to create these portals changed. So how are you going to make sure that this work can be maintained into the future? Is this platform that you're using, is that easily maintainable? How do you guarantee that it still works in 5 years or in 10 years?
Thank you. Should I start, maybe? I don't know, now you don't have a mic. Yeah, so thank you for this question. I know the problem. I've also been around for a long time. I've seen all these portals come and go, and also those you did never think that they would go, they went. And I think that in this case, we are in the great position of having an academy project, and this is something that we're in this Academy of the Sciences and Humanities. They have very long-term projects, and they are in fact using the same technology because Nils and Jonas are working in another project too. So we're trying to not do this on our own, but to be doing this together with the Academy project. The Academy also has a group called Tilota, which is a group of people doing the DH parts for various projects, like walking around in projects. So we're really trying to integrate this and not do this as like a thing that ELAR does on its own, because this, of course, I know it's not going to work. And yeah.
And as for the technologies that work behind this portal, we sort of like changed the data into the RDF format, which has been around since, I don't know, maybe 30 years or so. And the technology we use is SparkQL, which is also from like semantic web. And this is something very old, and I think it won't go away in the next 10 years. But obviously that what you see, like the JavaScript sort of like programmed website might have to change in maybe 5 years or so, I don't know. But the underlying sort of like architecture, I think, will stay the same, or there's a good chance it won't change.
And the metadata, right? If we have consistent metadata, if we have a high degree of data maturity in our organization, we can use the metadata and we can just go into the next system without having to manually curate things.
We have plenty of time, so let me also just read 2 quick questions off of the chat, since all the archivists I see are very excited. Nick Tieberger asks, how many languages is it translated into? And Susan Kang asks, what platform are you using?
So the languages are, right now we're working on Spanish, but like it's the first one. I realized when going through the metadata that there is a lot of Portuguese already in there, so I guess that might be, but that's management to decide for what is the next step, which is the next regional portal. I think it's like, but there is no limitation in the system as to like what languages could be put in there. Sorry, the second question was about the platform. Yeah, Jonas.
I'm not quite sure what you mean by platform, but I can say that we use a triple store to store the data in. That's Fuseki, and we programmed the website using Vue and Vuetify. I don't know if that explains the question, but the data is stored in Preservica. That's like where the actual data is.
Thank you very much for this presentation and the project. Great, very happy, especially working in Latin America. I had a question on the other side, the new projects now. Are you going to ask the leaders to provide all the metadata in both in English and Spanish, or only in Spanish and you'll do the translation in English? Or
This is, I guess, also a question for the funder of the project in the ELP cases, and otherwise we are recommending
the
and
funder is going
supporting.
to say, I don't have to force any grantee working in Latin America to provide Spanish. It's rather the opposite, right? So they're going to be happy, because usually what we have is that that's the first thing they want to do, at least to have it in Spanish or Portuguese, the biggest contact language, which is the most likely one that is being read. So it's more the other way around. So we don't have to force anyone. They're like, can we please do this? We just weren't able to do this within the system we had. It only took us 22 years to get it going. Sorry, but we tried hard, so.
But not, you've asked a lot of questions, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, this is always a challenge doing internationalization and multilingualism in web spaces. So I have a couple questions because it's not really clear to me. And thank you for the views as a framework that's helpful. So you've built basically your own presentation layer using views, and you're using it, you're querying RDF through the Sparkle. So you're writing Sparkle interface queries into your views and then presenting that. Thank you. That's very helpful to understand that. Now, inside of these systems, we largely have two layers. We have the interface layer, and then we have the content layer. So we're talking about multilingualism in the content layer. Now, when we talk about content layer, we have two sections. We have two ways to do this. We have parallel records or a single record with multiple language fields. Which approach have you had here?
Right now, we are having one record with multiple language fields. We'll see if we stick to that, because thanks to the Git workflow that we have, we can work on this data, and we might even change this, but that was the intended way in the IMD format from the beginning. We had to extend it a bit, but maybe we will change it, but I think that's what we're going for, right, to keep it.
And have you approached anything with controlled taxonomies so that you can do all the translation of the controlled taxonomies independently, and then you have the data structures in the controlled the identifiers for the controlled taxonomies, and then you offload the translation to a file that can be even shared between archives that want to use those taxonomies?
This sounds great. No, seriously, of course, this is exactly what we want. And I think it's been really interesting to hear, for example, about participant roles, contributor roles, like, yeah, really, and the various contributions to this. And I would love for it to be standardized, but I would also not love for it to be standardized, because of course, if you're just, I'm not a documentary linguist or a language documenter or anything, but I'm thinking if you're documenting a language and you're just starting to know it, how will you know which genres are there? And maybe they are not, so maybe we're not talking about, for example, genres. Maybe we need to have some other categories that are less like theoretically Latin, so that we need to have other categories that we can use to help people navigate. Also, people are not linguists and don't know about procedural discourse or, so,
Let's have one quick question here.
Hello. I'm not sure I understood, but do you need more translation for the user interface? No. Okay.
Well, no. We will probably need to translate more of it as we go, but right now most of the user interface should be translated, I hope.
Okay.
Bernard.
Thank you. I will join Zach in the praise of the new interface. Yesterday we heard that it was necessary for ELAR to be decolonized. Now we will have ELAR in more than one colonial language, yes, which is fascinating. When I was a grantee, I think that translating some of the metadata, some of the interface into the language that I was documenting, it would not have been the most costly effort that I did as part of the process. Do you envision adding some of that?
So the problem is not the translation, the problem is the display and the functionality of the archival system. So that's more the problem, right? So the problem is not to translate it, and the workaround that we had for a long time when we tried to approach this was to allow like two languages by a slash. That was like a hand workaround of making things work, because we didn't have the possibility of switching. when we transitioned to Preservica, we thought they have all the functionalities. Then we realized, no, it's really difficult to work with them and the interface is not good. So we then approached this one. And now this is basically the pilot where we can see this is how it works, this is how we're going to do it. And then once this is established, we can always take a sub-collection and use this, and you can translate it into any language you want. Once we have one portal system working as a structure, then we can do community portals, right? So that's the basic idea. So now we have, that was basically the pilot to say, now we have it for the Latin American collections. This is how the technology works. Now we could do, for example, single collection that could be then translated, but then of course also change the reorganization, because for a lot of things, and this is what we learned from Valentina or what we learned from the Australian projects that provide digital interfaces for communities, genre is just a very weird category because it's determined by our linguistic ideas. So the metadata categories need to change. There's another layer that comes to it. But just as the structure the archive is, providing it then in Manoki would not be a problem. The way you want them to change.
Let's debate this.
Talk to me later or to Mandana.
Okay, thank you.